We see students get hung up on failure all the time when it's part of science. Like, it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. So having that example, being like, look, even in this like high stakes, like real life-ish scenario, like you're going to fail, and honestly kind of good. Then you know that doesn't work. We go back and do this, or I mess up, let's invent some new solution to do it. And I think that speaks a lot to the scientific mindset we want to foster in our students.
This is going to be a bit of a different episode than what we've done so far. This time we're tying education to current pop culture, specifically the new movie Project Hail Mary. It stars Ryan Gosling as Ryland Grace, a middle school science teacher who literally has to save the entire world on a deep space mission. Throughout the movie, and even more if you've read or listened to the novel it's based on, Grace has to solve problem after problem with his knowledge of science. And it really puts science teachers front and center as the heroes they are. I'm your host, DCSD Communication Director Jason Hackett, and after listening to the audiobook, I put out a call to middle school science teachers to talk about this remarkable story. And 2 Rocky Heights middle school teachers responded. So we're going to talk today with Erica Hamlin, 7th grade science teacher, and Sarah Lockmiller, 8th grade science teacher, about how art connects to real life in their classrooms. So welcome, Sarah and Erica. Thank you so much. Let's have each person introduce themselves so people know whose voice is whose here.
All right. My name is Erica Hamlin. I currently teach 7th grade science at Rocky Heights. It's my 4th year here, and it's been super awesome. I've enjoyed it a lot.
And I'm Sarah Lockmiller. I teach 8th grade here at Rocky Heights, and it's my 2nd year at Rocky Heights, 4th year teaching science overall.
And we've all read or listened to the novel, and we've all seen the movie, right?
Yes.
Correct.
I'm going to warn everybody right now, if you're listening to this and do not want to be spoiled, maybe wait and listen to this after you've seen the movie, or even better yet, after you've seen or read the book or listened to the audiobook, because it's a great story and there's so much there, and it's really hard to cover it without spoiling it. So we're going to go ahead and spoil the heck out of this movie and book. So first question then, who did what as far as like reading or listening to the audiobook?
I've read the book back in October.
I read the book more recently. I think I read it in February. I did the ebook.
Okay.
So on my Kindle.
Okay. And then I listened to the audiobook because I'm apparently an audio person, right? Doing a podcast. So it's really interesting to think about all the different perspectives that everybody had. Do you prefer the book or the movie?
Oh, I think I'm a book person. Watching the movie, I understood a lot because of the book, but I really enjoyed the extra science that they put into the book that I don't feel like they had in the movie.
Yeah, I would agree. I think the movie was really good. It did a good job showing the science, but the book was even better because it can go in depth and you can kind of hear him talking and like the trial and error of it.
Yeah.
And like the movie, for the most part, he tries things and they work. But in the book, he tries a bunch of things and they don't work, which is more like real life science.
Right. That's what I wanted to get from both of you, from the science perspective. Like, and I kind of agree with that because the book just blew me away. And I was so excited about this. Of course, they have to boil things down for a movie. And it was a pretty long movie, even with taking a bunch of stuff out. But there's just so much science in the book part that was just fascinating. So as science teachers, what did you think of how the science was presented in both of those? I mean, there's science fiction, of course, but then he bases a lot of what he does on his knowledge. And he's constantly, you have that little thing that he says every once in a while, well, I just know this because I'm a science teacher, right? Like changing the calculations between imperial and metric and things like that. So what was your perspective on both of those?
For me, what I really enjoyed about the science was he almost chunked it out and focused on specific science from specific times throughout it and did a good job of, I think the author actually set it up really well because he had lost his memory. So it's kind of someone who doesn't know a lot of science is now going through this pathway of with him of understanding how he knows all this science. And I think in that perspective, it allowed for you to learn the science with him, even if you weren't very aware of it. That's how I felt.
That's a good way to put that. Yes. Because it kind of walks you through and it sort of explains it.
Yeah.
And even if you don't know all of this stuff, you can still kind of pick it up and follow along. And yeah.
Yeah. I would agree with that. I actually wasn't interested in reading the book originally because I feel like a lot of sci-fi gets so like far-fetched with the science. It's like I kind of wrote it off, but my husband and my brother-in-law read it and were like, you of all people need to read this book. And so I gave it a chance and I read it and I liked it. And like, it felt digestible, kind of like Erica was saying, where you could read it, you could understand it, and he explains the science. But for the most part, it makes sense, where he's talking about like electromagnetic waves. And it's like, hey, I just taught that to 8th grade, like as I was reading it. So I think it did a good job of balancing being mostly correct with being digestible for just about anyone.
You even have some scenes where he's in the classroom and teaching some stuff. I actually wrote this question out. I was like, I gotta word this exactly right. Is Ryan Gosling the coolest science teacher ever? Or is he shining a light on an overlooked fact that science teachers are super cool and a well-kept secret?
I think option 2. I think it's the best part about being a science teacher is pretty much what they showed is little increments of our day, best case scenario, obviously. But I do think science teachers have not only classroom education skills, but they have the science passion like he did of, wow, I would want to investigate that. I would want to do that. And so I definitely think that's how a lot of science teachers are, for sure.
In the movie, I think it's right towards the beginning, he's throwing the little earth to the kids and they're answering questions. That feels pretty real life. Students are like perfectly behaved, which is awesome, but like that interaction with the students. And I think it talks to a lot of science teachers are good teachers. They are into it, not just for the teaching, but also for the science. For me, I switched to teaching from doing research. And part of that was I was working as a teaching assistant, and I really preferred that to sitting in the lab and doing research, like getting to work with other people and like seeing kids light up and like connect the dots. And I feel like the scenes where you get to see them teaching, you kind of get to see that. And that's what's important to me with teaching.
Yeah.
Getting that light bulb moment all the time and seeing them make connections and then realize how different pieces of what they're learning interact with each other. I mean, from the standpoint of even the central problem in the movie, right, is the sun is being dimmed for some reason and all the different things that are happening because of that. And the book explains it even more in depth. But if the sun were to be dimmed somehow, then that affects how crops are grown and how geopolitics would work when a certain portion of the population is starving and things like that. So you get to see all of that interconnectedness. And is that a lot of what you get to help, I guess, bring about for your students, is that broader understanding?
Yeah, I think we often try to just do something, whether it's tying in interests or current events, to make the science more relevant or like make it an investigation rather than like, here's 16 facts on space. Like, let's investigate, why does this happen? Why do things with more mass have this different gravity? So like making it more investigative and then connecting it to real world things. Or, you know, sometimes kids will be like, hey, I'm interested in this, or like, why does XYZ happen? And we have the freedom to like kind of go into that at least a little bit.
And I would say a lot of fun with science, and I don't feel other contents could get this as much, as we get so much investigating problem solving of, here is the problem, how our sun is slowly fading. How do we solve it? But we can take that and we can do it in classroom with all topics, all types of science. It's really cool that the book creates basically an entire scientific method situation that these kids face all the time within our classrooms.
As I was listening to the audiobook piece, I was thinking about that too. I had to go look up what the scientific method was again, because I was like, oh, I think he's doing that. And like step by step, especially early on when he's trying to learn about astrophage and what's happening. And it's like, okay, we've got a problem. So I had to look it up. It was like, ask the question / observation is this first step, right? Then background research, then the hypothesis, then test with an experiment, when she does a ton of experiments in this thing, analyze the data, draw conclusions, and then communicate the results. Like that, I was just like, oh, wow, this is so cool, because it is exactly what you have to walk through as scientists. So my next question, I guess, is then, do you foresee a point in time when this story, this movie is at least well known enough that this becomes something that almost becomes a bit of a teaching aid? Have you had students that have seen this or read the book or anything like that, that maybe the light bulb went on for them?
What was cool was the book was actually recommended to me by a student. One of my students said, hey, Miss Hamlin, I think you should read the Hail Mary Project. And I was like, okay. And the craziest part is I don't think the description of the book does it justice, because I was like, this book is, the description sounds off. I just wasn't interested. And then I read it and I was like, this is exactly science. So I think it could be a cool way to connect with your kids in the class of, here's our problem. You could even do like, how did he go about solving it? How do we do this in our everyday life, or something like that? I think it definitely has the potential for sure.
I think so too. And one thing I really like, in addition to like going through the scientific method, is he goes through it and then it fails, and then it fails again, and then he loses the astrophage and has to just, build stuff out of everyday materials to try and fix his problem. And I feel like we see students get hung up on failure all the time when it's part of science. Like, it's not if, it's when it's going to happen. So having that example, like, look, even in this like high stakes, like real life-ish scenario, like you're going to fail, and honestly kind of good. Then that doesn't work. We go back and do this, or I mess up. Let's invent some new solution to do it. And I think that speaks a lot to the scientific mindset we want to foster in our students.
And what was cool about the story, as I was even thinking about it when preparing for this little chat with us, was I felt like I didn't realize this when reading the book or seeing the movie, but every big failure he had, it's almost that he maybe skipped some of the steps in the scientific method a little bit at times, right? And just didn't take the time to analyze the data quite as much. And he just got a result that he was happy with, and let's go ahead. The biggest example being the Taumiba becoming resistant to the xenonite, right?
Yes, I was just thinking that one too.
Yeah, because he just, I got a good result. Let's go forward, and didn't keep testing. So is that another piece that you also have to work with, teaching your kids? Is like, even though you think you got it, still keep testing all the way out. Test your hypothesis all the way, right?
Yeah, totally. I think it's also a culture thing. Once you think you have everything or the answer, or once you think it's solved, you're done, and you're not looking at other parts of the problem, and that can come back to and be something that's really hard to deal with.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was thinking too about when Rocky tried to save him, and then you thought maybe Rocky died. Mm-hmm. Again, spoilers. And then he tried to help Rocky because he was like the venting or whatever, and he thought he would clear out the vents for him. And he just jumped into it and did something without really thinking it all the way through. And then Rocky's like, you nearly killed me,
Yeah. Well, I think it's crazy though, because as I read the book, I thought he was doing the right thing too. Like, I was like, wow, you're a great scientist. This is great. And then Rocky's like, you ripped off my Band-Aids. And so I think that's another great way the book was set up, is you were, or at least I as the reader was right there following along with, he's like a really smart scientist. And then he even fails. Like you said, and it just shows how science is crazy, but it's mostly failure, and it's very limited success. And I think that book does a great job of showing it.
That was a fascinating journey to go on with him. And the writer did such a good job of taking you on the road to doing all that. So how much do you think he had to do for research to come up with all this? He's got the science, then he's got these ideas for some science fiction pieces that are kind of related to it, and he finds a way to tie them together. But then he also had to do a really good job, I would think, learning what a science teacher has to do and how a science teacher has to think.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I'd imagine he had to do quite a bit of research. I know he wrote The Martian and everything too, so must be something he's really interested in, and maybe like ongoing, he does the research and then like comes up with ideas is how my mind would go, but who knows? But I think he does do a fair job of presenting those things. And then like it did capture kind of the feeling of the middle school teacher, even, at the end with he goes back to teaching in a way. I liked that because it showed like he goes through this whole journey, saves the world, but then still goes back to teaching because it's kind of like a bug, I think, for some people where it's like, great, I saved the world, but I can keep teaching and inspiring people. And
I agree with Sarah. The research had to be almost, I feel like he had to do, because those are a bunch of different types of science too. It's not just biology or botany or chemistry. He was going in and out of all of them. And the I don't even know how to say it, but the physics of the space timing and all of that. So I definitely think I appreciate how much he took the time to research this if he wasn't knowledgeable to become knowledgeable. It was cool.
Right. And to your point earlier, Sarah, like a lot of sci-fi we're going to make a bunch of stuff up and do whatever. But he was like dedicated to make sure like this was rooted in actual science that you could follow along and understand and learn from a little bit and then connect it to, this is then plausible as science fiction. So that was kind of fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed, so my husband had read it before me. So I like to talk to him about what I'm reading. And he's like so happy I'm reading this book that he recommended because he recommended it. But I'm going and like, I'm reading about this problem coming up. And then like, sometimes be like, oh, it's a centrifuge or something. Or, oh, did he use this? And he's like, I can't tell you, just keep reading. But as a science teacher with like a pretty broad background, like trying to guess at like, is he going to do this? Is he going to think about that? That was really fun for me.
Yeah, I agree.
I think when we first, I emailed everybody and the two of you responded. Sarah, you mentioned too, like a background, and you said it earlier, like a background in higher ed of like, which way do I want to go? And there's a piece of that where he was frustrated with the machine of higher ed, and he kind of got kicked out of the group a little bit because he was extra controversial with his ideas. But that idea of, there's the learning, the research side, and then there's the, I really want to teach. And that, like you said, the bug that it stays with him throughout everything. Like, can you guys talk to that side of things a little bit more about your inspiration for teaching and why it's so important to you? And would you do it if you had to save the world and then go back to teaching?
For me, teaching was never really the plan. I did a bachelor's in biology and then I went straight into a PhD program in plant biology. So it's studying like little tiny plant structures, mostly like hydraulics. And that was fun. And doing stuff in the lab was great. I finished all my coursework, did a bunch of research, and then COVID hit. And that kind of like made me reevaluate. I was also teaching intro biology labs at the same time. And I found I really had a preference for the teaching part and like getting to explore all these different pieces of science rather than, just this little plant and like these couple little structures, which is still important stuff. But for me, the passion was more in like getting to share all of this science and getting to like help people think scientifically and analyze data. Those are important skills for your life. And that just felt more significant and like I would essentially do more with my life. I'm not saying research is doing nothing at all, but for me personally, that's where I would more shine and more enjoy. So I switched to that and became a middle school teacher. And now I get to look at all kinds of science all the time.
Yeah, I was going to say I was the same way. I got my undergrad in zoology. And at the very end of that, my senior year of my bachelor's, I started working in a classroom with one of the classes I had. We went into high school and taught ecosystem stuff. And I was actually like, wow, I really like working with kids because they're interested and it's fun to talk about something you're interested with others that are interested. Then I just took it from there. And I just think it's a really fun opportunity that we get to come to our jobs every day and talk about science. And because I love science, I love investigating it, I love finding problems, I love nerding out on every little detail, and they are pretty into it too. And so I think that's just so cool. And like Sarah said, I think it's really cool, especially in middle school. We go over a broad topic of different science content. And so it's really fun to just talk about it every day. I love that part.
And this is strictly my own opinion, a long-held opinion going back, I don't know, 15, 20 years of working in communications in school districts. And full respect to every other teacher out there, but middle school teachers, I think, have some of the hardest jobs, I think personally, and as somebody who raised 2 kids who went through those middle school years, that's difficult. They're making that big transition from being kids to being more independent teenagers, and they're all doing it at different speeds and rates. And, you know, when the kids come into middle school as 6th graders or 7th graders, depending on which school you're at in Douglas County School District, we kind of have both, but they come in and even just height is so different. You know, they come in and the girls are like way taller than the boys and the boys are still like elementary school size. And then by 8th grade, the boys have hit that growth spurt and now all of a sudden they're close to their full height. And you've got all of this stuff going on and they're different perspectives and they're trying on their different personalities and what do I want to do and how do I want to do things and hormones and the whole deal. And it's kind of tough to be a middle school person.
Oh, yeah.
And then for you guys to like deal with that on a daily bit. You may not have the same student, even though it's the same student. They come to school Monday and they're a different person the next day. Is that fair?
Yes.
And so what does it take to be a middle school teacher, period, regardless of science?
I think you have to be adaptable and you have to be able to take a joke at all times. Like there's never a boring day. You don't ever know. Like you can have the perfect lesson plan, but you don't know exactly what you're going to come into. So you have to be ready to like change it or, you know, okay, let's go investigate this. Or everyone's having a bad day. We have to do a little reset. And you never know what's going to be said. So you just kind of have to be able to roll with it. And maybe that's part of Ryland Grace in the movie. Like he's able to adapt and like obviously he's in a way crazier circumstance than teaching middle school, but like he stays relatively positive throughout it and kind of rolls with the punches and he's adaptable with it. And like he's able to like, okay, a new problem, we just have to keep going. And that's kind of something you have to do with being a middle school teacher. And if you don't have that flexibility, I think it would be a tough time. But I think a lot of us do.
Yeah, I was going to say, and it's crazy. You just have to be, especially as a teacher, prepared to fail. Like lessons never go the way that you want them to go. So you just have to be ready for the adaptability of, okay, that didn't work. How can I do it again? We are lucky enough to have multiple class periods. So I think it's kind of fun I feel like in between every class period, I kind of tweak it to be better or more time or something like that. So also a lot of quick adjustments. And I feel like we have to be really patient because a lot of kids are in the I can't do this, I can't be successful, I kind of phase. And you have to really work with them slowly to get them to start realizing like, you can do this. It is okay to be that it's hard and that kind of stuff. I don't know. I always just said that I am the most embarrassing human in the world. So that's why I teach middle school, because I'm just as embarrassing as them. And I feel like that represents middle school. Like it's not a fun time, but we all got to do it. So might as well cheer them on. I don't know.
That's so cool. As you guys are talking about this, it hit me. Maybe that's some of the genius of Andy Weir, the writer, Because who better to go through that kind of challenge than a middle school teacher because of how adaptable you have to be and keeping your wits about yourself and kind of your sense of humor and keep on going without getting frustrated because you have so many different challenges. You don't know where they're coming from the next time. And in a way, at the beginning, Rocky's kind of a middle school student, especially in the movie, right?
Yeah.
It's just like, I'm going to go crazy and whatever.
And his humor, like that humor that Rocky has, I feel like is what we see in the classroom. Like it's very, very similar.
Right?
Yeah, I thought that was good too.
That's a really cool insight. That's funny. And so what does it mean to you to have this kind of representation in a really successful, interesting book and then a big movie with Ryan Gosling in it? Like, how cool is it to have representation for middle school teachers as the heroes?
I was really happy about it. I had gone in knowing he was a teacher, but I didn't realize he was specifically a middle school teacher. And I really liked that because I feel like middle school, maybe because it's a bad time for a lot of people, like we don't talk about that. Like it never happened, but it did happen. And like seeing an actual middle school teacher with like an actual science background being the hero felt really nice. Like, hey, someone knows we exist and isn't pretending that they didn't go to middle school and that, middle school teachers have worth. Like he saves the world. And sometimes it does feel like we're overlooked. So I really appreciated that and that he had so much like valuable scientific insight. And it wasn't just like, oh, he can recite the periodic table. Like he's able to do that deep scientific thinking, but he's still a middle school teacher. And that's a lot of us. Like we're really into science. And I'm sure the depth of knowledge, like just in our department here, it's so deep, but not everyone like thinks to think about that. I couldn't have said it better. That was so true.
Yeah, because of everything that you have to know. It blows my mind to think that you have to go from biology to physics to astronomy to zoology and all these other things. Like, and you've got to know a little bit of all of that stuff. Well, actually, a lot of it. Not just a little bit, a lot of it, because I'm sure at some point you've also got those really sharp students that come in and go, oh, what about this? And they ask you like some hard question. You got to be ready to handle it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I wanted to actually say something from somebody who was an English major, like a whole other thing that's also really fascinating about this book and why I think it's super valuable in a lot of different ways. All the science in it is really cool, but also from the standpoint of the structure with which it was written because of, your standard storytelling. And it so beautifully fits the classic story circle. The guy that came up with Rick and Morty, he really adheres to the story circle. And so that's in 8 steps. The first one is a character is in a zone of comfort. Number 2, but they want something. Number 3, they enter an unfamiliar situation. So as you're thinking about all this, you've got Grace, what he was doing, and now all of a sudden he's in a really unfamiliar situation. Twice, actually, if you think about the flashbacks.
Yeah.
And when he just had to learn what was going on with astrophage, but then also the whole thing with when he's actually on the mission, right? Completely unfamiliar, doesn't remember who he is at first, things like that. So step 4, he adapts to it. Step 5, they get what they wanted. Step 6, they pay a heavy price for it. So think about that side of things too. 7, they return to their familiar situation. Having changed is number 8, just having changed, which is a really fascinating thing because you think about all the different times that he tried things through the scientific method. And if he skipped a step or whatever, that's where he messed up. But by the end, especially when he has to go find Rocky, he does everything, all the steps the right way, right? So he's like, all right, I learned my lesson. I'm not going to skip any steps. I'm going to sit there and think about this and analyze the data and go, and he finds Rocky and he does what he needs to do. So there's the part where he changed. He learned what he needed to do. And then what's interesting is the step 7, he returns to a familiar situation. That's him teaching again.
Yes, I thought the same. Yeah.
How cool is that? Like, I just find it super valuable that it's not just fluffy, like beat 'em up superhero movies or something, which I watched way too many of. But this is like super thoughtful from the science standpoint, from the storytelling standpoint, from a human standpoint. I love this story so much. So that's why I wanted to get some other people on here to talk about this a little bit.
I just think I really loved the way he could have just written the story. And it could have been, this is a science teacher, here's his problem, here's how it's solved. But the fact that he added in the flashbacks and then it all medically made sense as well was like mind-blowing to me, because it kept me as a reader so interested in, oh, that was a flashback. Oh, now how is he going to apply it? Oh, and kind of on edge to keep reading and wanting to read, because I needed to figure out, he wasn't supposed to be on this. So how did he get to it? And that, I think, the overall, like, that's just another part of it. That didn't even have to do with science. It was just good story writing that made you interested.
Well, and the fact that he, in the end, you find out, like, oh, he was forced on there. He didn't even have a choice at the end. Like, that was one of those curveball things that I thought, oh, wow, that's... Yeah. And he just says, he adapted to that, too, and just said, I'm just going ahead because what else am I going to do, you know?
Well, my boyfriend and I had a hard conversation after watching the movie of, do you return to Earth or do you stay with Rocky on his planet? And I was like, I'm staying. I'm not going back to a planet that did that to me. And he was like, no, I would go back because I'd want to know that they were okay. It was like another whole mental conversation you had to think about of, do you stay or do you go? And I don't know. It was just it brought up more conversations, I guess.
And that's what good stories do. They keep you thinking about that stuff too.
Yeah.
Sarah, what would you do?
I think I would stay with Rocky. He was really cute.
Yeah. And his little rock students.
Yeah, his rock students were really cute. And they had like their special bond. And like Rocky values him and he values Rocky. And I feel like the people on Earth, he saved them, but at that point, do they even know it's him? Like,
right.
How important is that? But I don't know. I would be a little fed up with the people that forced me onto it. And like, if I had a little Rocky and his family, I guess, his kind that like were welcoming me, I think I would stay with that.
Exactly. Well, and the part I thought about too was like, if he were to go back, I mean, they established that he really had no other connections, which kind of made it obvious for them to, well, you're going then. Mm-hmm. But anybody that he would have known was probably either, 20 to 30 years older. I mean, depending on what happened on Earth, some of them might not even be there anymore anyway. And so, yeah, it kind of was like, yeah, why not stay? And he got to teach.
Yeah.
So how cool was that? I thought about this from the standpoint of years and years ago when Star Trek came out. It was this optimistic science fiction that affected a couple of generations now. Mm-hmm. And so many people now that you see some of the technology that's been invented, some people go back, the inventors of that technology go, well, I was inspired by Star Trek. And certain like communication devices and things like that, they were inspired by that. And certain people became astronauts because of what they saw and things like that. Do you have any indication or thoughts that something like this story could inspire another generation of kids that could decide, you know what, that was a cool thing, and it lights up their imagination and interest in science, things like that?
I think if it were to ignite something, it would ignite the idea that there could be life outside of Earth, but it doesn't have to be a green alien. Like, it could be a microbe, or it could be a small astrophage type of material or cell. Like, I could see people wanting to, almost like weird biologists of space. I don't know if that is something, but that's where I would take it of, oh, we should investigate what's out and about around the sun or something like that based on what they saw. That's what I was thinking.
I think going off of that, I agree. Like, it could inspire people to look into or reframe how they think about extraterrestrial life, but also like with that reframing attitudes towards it. I feel like a lot of people, like, the idea that there's life out there is scary, but Rocky ends up being like not scary at all, and he's a positive influence. So like that's a possibility. And then the astrophage isn't inherently attacking. It's just going through its life cycle. So trying to figure that out and like reframing it, like it is not trying to hurt us. It's just trying to live and reproduce and take advantage of things just like living things on Earth. So I think kind of having that twist to it is a positive to get people to kind of consider the possibilities. Like there still could be bad extraterrestrial life, but there's also good or neutral. And I like that, adding that like dynamic to it rather than just black and white.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. That was actually one of the things I was sort of surprised by when I first went through the story was I just thought the extraterrestrial life was going to be the astrophage and, something that's, oh, that's really interesting. And it's a different kind of life form and whatever. And it sort of surprised me that, oh, there's intelligent life now that's also interacting with him, and like you said, like he didn't encounter any like wariness, like it was a movie from like Aliens or something like that, or any of the other stuff that's like, oh no, it's dangerous and scary and whatever. So
yeah, I thought the astrophage was it.
Yeah.
And like I tried not to really read too much about what it was about. So it's like, okay. And I was like really excited when he's talking about at the beginning, he's like non-water-based life. And then he's like, oh darn, it's water-based life. And like I had thought about that before and like had discussions with other science people about like, could this be possible? And so I was really excited to see that show up. And then I was like, oh, okay, it's water-based. And then like Rocky's ship shows up and I was like, wait, there's another thing? And they're like, yeah, they're just getting to like the really good part. So that was exciting for me.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah, that was the fun part of that. It was like, oh, we've completely turned a corner here, So last question, because you guys have been very, very generous with your time and it's after the school day has ended and you guys need to leave. So one last question. Do you think as a middle school science teacher, you could do what Ryland Grace did?
That's a loaded question. Oh, gosh. I don't even know that. Like, do you mean saving, like problem solving and going through all of the trials? Or do you mean going on a not coming back space trip?
Ooh, that's a good question. I didn't think about it from that perspective. Yeah. I guess I was thinking more the first way.
Yeah.
But yeah, the other part of it is like, oh, yeah. Because you've got family and friends and all that kind of stuff you'd be leaving behind. Yeah. So let's just focus on the first part.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just as scientists and science teachers.
I think that would be really cool to have his kind of how his investigations worked out. And I think I would have a harder time with how many times he fails and just starts back up again. I don't think I could do that as well as he did. But it would be really cool to do his investigations and the research and just trying to figure out what it's happening, how. And I think it's so cool in the very beginning, too, how they just give him this cell and they're like, you need to tell us everything about it. Here's your lab of anything you want. And how he starts with going over what he should do to identify it and all of that. I think that would be a really cool thing to do.
Yeah, I agree with like the problem solving. I'm less of like a astrobiologist and astrophysicist than he is, but with the problem solving, I think I could do some of that. Like I've been in my research days where like we have to prop this plant up, just this one leaf. Like how do we do that? And our fancy solution was get a little florist card holder and we used a pipe cleaner and we just wrapped it on there. So like coming up with like oddball things like that. Like they're like, how do we get the astrophage? We just build another box. And then like I liked seeing them come out with like just tin foil and putting that on there because I did some research with a particle accelerator looking at like pine needles. And you would think like super fancy everything, but like how do they insulate some of that stuff? They wrap it in tin foil. So like that aspect of problem solving and thinking out of the box or like figuring it out with what materials you have, investigating the astrophage, I think that part, sure. But like getting to like all the calculations and stuff, that's not quite my specialty. Maybe more so the Martian figure out how to get plants to grow in space. That I could do, maybe. I think I'd be more competent at that. But I think the mindset's there.
Yeah, the mindset for sure.
Yeah. That's where the two of you and all science teachers, I just bow to all of you because holy cow, the knowledge that you have, the ability to translate all of that and not just teach kids how to do it, but help people understand the value of it on a day-to-day basis is so cool and so valuable. And so thank you for doing what you do and inspiring kids every year and helping them figure out how to be problem solvers and make the world a better place. So that's cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you again for taking the time to talk with us about this. This was a lot of fun. It was just cool to like kind of nerd out about something and think about it from a teacher's perspective and this idea that a teacher saved the world, saved two different worlds. And that's what it takes. Who else but a teacher could do it? Thanks for listening to DCSD Notebook from Douglas County School District, which serves more than 60,000 students, making it the third largest public school district in Colorado. With 92 schools, including neighborhood schools, charter options, and homeschool support, DCSD is a welcoming home for every style of learner. To find out more, visit dcsdk12.org. And make sure to hit the follow button in your favorite podcast app so you can get every new episode, as well as Parent University once a month, where we hear from experts within the district and from the larger community talking about timely, relevant issues that parents face in our complex world. We're here to help you, so if you have a question and can't find the answer on our website, email communications@dcsdk12.org and we'll help point you in the right direction.